Hi, Luke. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. It's great to have you with us today.
Hi, Julia. Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
Great. I'm really looking forward to what you're going to share with the listeners. I think you certainly have some places that we haven't touched upon yet that I'm looking forward to elaborating on and getting into the hands of our listeners. So to start off, I would like you to kind of share with the listeners what you're currently doing as a practice, kind of what clientele you work with, what a majority of your workday looks like in this space.
Sure. Well, I am a recently certified level 2 integrative health practitioner. So that's been great. The last year has been a lot of studying and going through the trainings with Dr. Cabral. And, over the last few months, I've kind of been working with more people. I work with a lot of people in the States, so I work primarily remotely. I'm here in Mexico today, and I'm finding that a lot of the people that resonate with my message are people who have looked basically everywhere else. People who are dealing with chronic illnesses and just aren't finding relief in our sort of conventional Western model. And a lot of them are friends of mine or acquaintances that I've met in my travels over the years. And so they're people that I've sort of been associated with over the years, so that there's a level of trust there already, which is nice. So I'm able to kind of talk to people on their level, which I think a lot of people are missing a little bit when they go into the conventional model. There seems to be like a big gap between the patient and the doctor. This sort of this hierarchy that makes things a little uncomfortable for people and doesn't make them feel like they're being really cared for as an individual, as a person. So that's kind of where I put my focus when I'm talking to the people I work with, is really making them feel heard and making them feel like individuals, and a lot of times we learn together too, like a lot of times it's about learning more of their story. And as more of their story unfolds and comes out, I'm able to kind of put more of the pieces together and help them in the best way that I can. So right now, to answer the other part of your question, work looks a lot like just gaining information and trying to present it to people through my social media in a way that's accessible and easy to understand, because I feel like there's so much out there. There's so much information out there that it's easy to get a bit lost. So what I try to do is try to take what I've learned that I've felt like has been the most valuable for my own healing and kind of translate that in a way that's easy, hopefully easy for people to understand.
Yes. Yeah. I think you make a few great points. I think part of, we can get so overwhelmed by the information that's out there, and everybody can kind of present this similar, facts, but sometimes your message or the way that you present it or your demeanor and your space kind of feels a little bit more, like home to somebody else versus another page may seem. So making your information, be accessible to clients that maybe share a similar message that you do, it can really be influential in that way. And I think the other really good point that you made is that we really, as all human beings, which I think we've lost so much of, especially in this last year, just crave as the individuals that we are, connection and some level of being seen and heard, because that's really all that makes us feel like we can kind of collapse, be vulnerable, get into a state of some sort of healing. And allowing your clients to do that, I don't know, if you would agree, but I feel like sometimes that's the missing link, whether it's, because I know a lot of natural practitioners that maybe that's not their strong suit. And I think sometimes it does allow people to get really vulnerable and really get deep into their healing when they feel like it's kind of like a safe place to collapse almost.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I feel like that's something that's unfortunately missing in our conventional model, just feeling cared for and feeling seen as a person. A lot of people they're really suffering, and they just need to feel safe and need to feel heard in order to kind of initiate that healing process. And so I try my best to offer that to my people, and to, I don't have all the answers, truthfully. A lot of times it's a process of, like I said, like learning their story. And, it's funny, sometimes I'll talk to someone 5 or 6 times. And on the 6th conversation, like one little piece of information comes out about like, oh yeah, 10 years ago, like whatever it may be. And everything starts to click, but it's only through dialogue and really like hearing their story. And, you know, a lot of it comes out as they feel more comfortable. And I feel like that's the most important thing, at least at the beginning, is just like establishing, like you said, that connection.
Yes. Yeah. Another great point, because that's, in my opinion, the benefit of working ongoing with a practitioner. You know, you can get labs that tell you that maybe there's yeast or bacteria overgrowth and what you're going to do about it. But maintaining this kind of longer term relationship with a practitioner and client allows you, like you said, to just simply have conversations that you, as the investigator, you know, you hear something that the client may not think that makes a huge deal to what you're trying to get to the bottom of. But to you, you're like, aha, now we got it. That's what we were missing. And it's not unless you're kind of having this ongoing relationship with them that you can kind of get into that deeper, you know, deeper information as to where they came from.
Yeah. And it's so true. And the other side of that is that, you know, a lot of times people need to make pretty big changes to their diet and their lifestyle. And it's a sensitive thing. Like we have so much emotional attachment to food or to just our habits. So, you know, on the first meeting to tell someone, okay, well, you know, I know what you need to do. You need to change all these things. Like it doesn't always work that way. There needs to be trust there. And there needs to be a feeling that, in my opinion, that there should be a feeling that people are allowed to still make mistakes in their healing process, that they don't need to change everything right away, and that they're not going to be judged for the way that they eat, or, you know, whatever their self-care regimen looks like. You know, so I think that's another important part of it too, is like gaining a sense of respect, you know, not only being heard, but like really respecting where people are at and not making them feel bad about the choices they've made that may have brought them into the state of health that they're currently in. And just like letting people kind of slowly work their way out of those habits and those holding patterns, because, you know, they take, as you know, it takes years to get into some of these places. You know, whether it be chronic illness or autoimmune or whatever it may be, like it's years in the making, you know? So I think that they're, I try to work from the heart, you know, I try to work from a place of really finding compassion for the people that I'm working with. So, and so that they can feel that and feel like, okay, someone's, you know, this person like has my back, you know, and they're allowed to slip up and slide back, and, you know, we just get back on track.
Of course. Yeah. Just holding that safe place for them to go through the process, whatever it looks like, whether they're great at it right out of the gate or whether they're stumbling along. It's just some place for them to land where they know they're supported. Yeah. It makes all the difference.
Exactly.
So we're going to dive a little bit more into that, because I think you having that approach into kind of the spirituality and a little bit of that focus, I want to touch upon that. But I'm curious, have you always done this? Have you always been in more of like the natural health space for your profession? Did you kind of get into this a little bit later on? Tell us a little bit about kind of your transition to where you're at now. Were there, you know, obstacles that you faced along the way?
Well, it's a long and winding road. So where to begin? So I think I've always been, that's good. I've always been interested in wellness and the idea that we have untapped potential. This has always been something that's fascinated me. And I think when I was young, I started getting interested in meditation, and I found Buddhism at a pretty young age. And, you know, one of the core philosophies of Buddhism is that we all have this potential to evolve, essentially. And that was very appealing to me as I think I was young. I was 10 when my mom got me into meditation, and that kind of started the ball rolling. And I also, you know, kind of alongside that, I have this sort of like, I don't know where it came from, but a sort of inherent skepticism of sort of mainstream anything. And, you know, whether it be mainstream medicine or media or whatever, I was always a little bit like, I don't know about this. And so I think my meditation practice kind of stayed with me through my teens and into my early 20s. Although I was living an incredibly unhealthy lifestyle. I was living in New York City when I went to college and was playing in rock bands and staying out and drinking beer and smoking cigarettes. And I was not very like health conscious, but was still meditating and still had this practice. And that created a little bit of inner tension, you could say, where there was like, okay, like these things aren't entirely compatible. And at a point I made the choice I wasn't feeling really fulfilled with my life in New York, and decided to go to make the commitment to learn more about wellness and healing, and to deepen my own spiritual path, and just to learn more and kind of expand my horizons. So that took me to Asia. I landed in Vietnam and began studying with a Buddhist monk and studying more meditation and Qigong. And also simultaneously still staying out late and still not eating well and kind of burning the candle at both ends. And then at a point I was like, okay, I need to like actually take care of my body, because I actually ended up getting quite sick in Vietnam. I think I had like a waterborne illness or something like that. And that really took a lot of energy out of me. And it took me a good couple months to recover. I don't know if it took me a couple months to kind of like get to the point where I realized that I needed to like make some serious changes to how I was taking care of myself physically, because all my attention had been on the spiritual side and not so much on the physical. Mm-hmm. So that brought me to Thailand, where I began studying Thai yoga massage, and sort of traditional Thai healing modalities. And that was an amazing time in my life. I learned a lot about the body, and I learned a lot about how we hold emotions and how emotions can manifest into illness and things like this. And I worked with massage for many years after that, but I was still not seeing the results I wanted to see in the people I was working with. Like I'd have people come to me who sometimes people just have like a little bit of tension and they come for a massage and then you never see them again. But I would have people come to me with chronic illnesses or chronic pain, that like the massage and the body work wasn't giving lasting results. It wasn't giving lasting benefit. So that kind of got me thinking that there's more to the story. And that brought me to Costa Rica, where I began studying more on the kind of shamanic plant medicine side, studying Amazonian plant medicines and things like that. And that was also an incredible time in my life. And I've received a lot of sort of, I guess you could say, sort of like emotional healing from that, and some spiritual healing from that, and a lot of realizations into kind of my own traumas and what I was holding from my childhood and perhaps past lives, who knows. But again, the people that I was seeing coming to receive healing, a lot of times would come back again and again. And as I was working with all these different modalities, I was seeing patterns where like people who had been sick for a long time would come, receive medicine, and leave for a little while and then come back, and they'd be exactly where they were when they started. And I was like, okay, so something's not clicking. Something's not initiating like meaningful or long lasting change. And then just sort of by chance, I was invited to a conference for holistic healthcare workers. Mm-hmm. And I just sort of happened upon this workshop with this woman who was talking about the gut. And she started talking about leaky gut and gut health. And this is the first time I ever heard the analogy of the rain barrel effect. And I was just completely captivated. I was like, this is it. This is it. Like, this is where it begins, like this is the part where healing comes from the inside out, rather than applying modalities from the outside in, applying whatever it may be, applying whatever traditional medicine you might work with, or massage or meditation or all these things. Like, it was missing something. And what it was missing was change, like actual change in people's lifestyle and diet and what's happening internally, especially in the gut. So I started to research that a bit more and came upon Dr. Cabral and his work. And I guess the rest is history. When I found Dr. Cabral's work, I was like, okay, this is exactly what I've been looking for. Like someone who can kind of like bring all these things together, who also understands the importance and the value of a spiritual practice and of emotional balancing and all these things, but with sensible diet and detoxification and healing the gut and things like that. So it's really been an incredible journey, studying what he's put out there. And I've learned so much, and I know it's still just the tip of the iceberg, and just the amount of healing I've been able to do on myself through my own learning process has been really beautiful too. So that's kind of where I'm at with it now.
Yeah, what a story. And it's so interesting that even in your own kind of travels and your own journey, it's almost like you kind of just were peeling back the layers, right? You were like getting one layer at one place, and then you travel to the next, and that was another layer. And it's kind of that learning process, even no matter, Dr. Cabral, I think, would probably still say that he goes through a similar process, where this is really an industry where you can never really stop learning. There's always something to know. Things are always evolving, and there's always a way to kind of make yourself a better practitioner. And that's honestly what I love about it, is because it's I do too. There's no boring day.
Yeah, no, there's really not. It's so beautiful it's very humbling to know, to realize how much more there is to learn, even just in the state of the field of wellness, just like where we're at, in terms of what we understand on a scientific level. Like, we're still at the beginning, and it's really beautiful. It's a really exciting time to be involved in this work.
Yes. Yeah. So when you went through kind of your travels and a little bit of your own transformation, were there any obstacles? I think when I heard your story, I thought, I wonder if he lost some of his cigarette smoking, drinking band buddies along the path. And what did that look like? And were there specific obstacles that maybe you probably have some gratitude for now, but were they hard in the moment? Or were you kind of just really well received throughout the process?
They were definitely challenges, for sure, and the challenges still unfold today. I had some challenges with addiction in my past, mostly to alcohol and tobacco, or like my two main vices. Mm-hmm. And it was in Costa Rica that I was able to. It was through working with some of these Amazonian medicines that I was able to release. Well, my cigarette addiction kind of left overnight after a treatment with a medicine called Cabral, which is from a tree frog from the Amazon.
Wow.
And it was after my first treatment with that I never smoked again. So I'm very grateful to that. So that was, and I had tried many, many, many times in the past. And I think I was learning around that time how addictions are tied to our trauma and tied to our emotional wounding. And I don't think that was something I was really understanding or really looking or really ready to look at. And so I think it was around that time that it just, I think anytime we overcome an addiction, it's like, we have to go through it a few times until something clicks. And I think what clicks a lot of time is like when we connect it to, what's deeper, what's existing on an emotional level. And I think that it was just the right time and the right place with the right medicine that just was able to kind of bless me with alleviating myself from that beast. And then that was kind of like the beginning of like my like physical detoxification, where I was like, okay. And I started like eating a lot better and started taking my health a lot more seriously and started taking diet a lot more seriously, and even understanding what that meant. Because, we don't get a lot of guidance with that in the West, in terms of, I grew up eating whatever was around, Yes. And then, a couple of years later, I just, it was like, as I was starting to like work with more people, I was like, if I'm going to be working with people on their health, I need to start taking my health a lot more seriously. And I need to be, I don't want to say I was doing it to be an example for the people I was working with, but like I believe that when we are feeling good, we resonate a certain energy that attracts people that also want to heal. So at some point I was like, okay. And I don't know. I woke up one day with a hangover after having a few beers the night before. And I was just like, I'm so done feeling this way. And I just stopped and just started taking my health a lot more seriously and just really committed to loving myself, which is, I think, the part that was missing for a long time. Like I was missing the self-love aspect of healing. Like it was about, I was very much up here, and I was very much about like learning what was working for people and, learning the science, but like I hadn't really learn to accept the parts of myself that I didn't like. And once I was able to start doing that, I found it much easier to take care of myself, because I think we all have this part of ourselves that's a little bit wounded and like needs care for, and once I'd learned to kind of start taking care of myself the way that I would take care of someone else that I loved, things started to get a lot easier. And then, there's definitely been challenges in terms of, social and family life, because I don't know if you can relate I don't know if you're from New England, but the New Englanders like to drink. They like to drink. And a lot of my friends, they like to drink, and a lot of my family, they like to drink. And it's not that I receive any pressure, but now that I've chosen a life of abstinence and sobriety, it's become interesting socially. Like I can still kind of put myself out there, and I can still go out and have a great time. And, just the other week, my wife and I, we went out dance until 4 a.m. and had a great time, and, no alcohol involved. But it's definitely, it seemed like alcohol was sort of the slippery adhesive that tied a lot of my friends and my family together. So without that, it's like I'm just not as interested in spending time in those sort of social environments. So I'm still navigating that, and I'm still sort of like navigating that social aspect, and like wanting to see people in my family and my friends more, but also knowing that at some point in the night we're gonna part ways, where like the booze train goes one way and I'm still right here, So it's I guess that is a challenge that will continue to unfold as long as I choose sobriety.
Yes. Yeah. No, I can totally relate. And I think it's one of those things where when, like you said, it's kind of what is the commonality, and, you get together with a bunch of friends and you're really just doing nothing but hanging around, having fun and drinking. And, I know I've been on protocols and I've shown up to these things and been like, oh, I'm not drinking. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, are you going to be any fun? Like, maybe not. Yeah. But you also kind of look at the situation from a different lens too. And it makes you realize that there's certain situations that are really fun and fulfilling to be a part of when there's none of that involved. And then there's situations where it's like, actually, this isn't really that fun, and I'd rather be doing something else. It's a little bit more meaningful. Yeah.
That's the part that's been challenging, is like realizing that it's not actually as much fun as it used to be without the alcohol. Mm-hmm. And being able to communicate that in a way that doesn't sound judgmental, or doesn't hurt someone's feelings, because it's such like alcohol is so insidious in our culture that to not partake in it, we have to kind of find a new way to connect sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. So I'd like to backpedal a little bit into what you were talking about, kind of where you realized that spirituality was a big part, or at least your connection to your deeper wounds, and where that was kind of what made you realize, wait a minute, I need to actually love myself on a deeper level to truly heal and truly take care of myself. And so I'm curious, kind of, do you bring that into your practice? Is that something that you think is an important part of really the whole process? I think the answer is yes, but I'd like you to expand for our listeners a little bit more about why you think it's so important, and kind of what the link is to physical healing with kind of our childhood deeper wound healing or spirituality connections. Mm-hmm.
That is a good question. Where to begin? I'm lucky in the way that a lot of the people that reach out to me are open to that kind of thing. They either already have a spiritual practice or are open to it. It's not something I like to drag people into, because I feel like this I would call it the spiritual marketplace is so vast, for people who are looking for somewhere to begin. And I was lucky to have good teachers from a young age, and teachers who came from lineages, where they were teaching the same way for a long time. So what they had to offer was very clear and very concise. And I feel like it's challenging to navigate connecting to a spiritual practice nowadays, because there's just so much, everybody's an expert and there's so much out there, and there's a lot of woo woo and there's a lot of kind of fluff, diluted. I would say
I usually refer to it as fluff. And it can seem so diluted is the word that always comes to my mind. Is like, there's people that are really doing it, and then there's people that kind of think they know that they're doing it, but it's not, it's diluted and fluffy. Those are probably the two best words.
Sure. Yeah. And it's confusing. It's sure. more than anything else, it's just confusing. And it actually gets people farther away from what they're actually looking for, which is a feeling of wholeness. I think it's a feeling of feeling comfortable in one's wounds and feeling comfortable in oneself. And I think a lot of times spirituality gets painted as this thing where it's like, if you just practice this technique, you won't be suffering anymore. And I started that way too. Like I kind of got onto the spiritual path for that reason. Like I was really, attracted to the idea that we could practice a certain technique and escape our pain, or escape or become something else, or to become enlightened, or whatever it may be. And as I got older and spent more time with good teachers, it was kind of like, no. Like, we practice to become more compassionate to ours and others' wounding and ours and others' own suffering, but it's not something that we ever really get out of. Like, that's just kind of, it's the deal we signed when we took this body. Like, there is suffering, and there's really no way around that. It's just a matter of like how we navigate it. And spirituality offers a lot of tools for navigating suffering and for navigating grief and our pain and our conflicts, but it's not an escape. And so I think that's where I start with people who are looking for a practice. I usually bring them into some like very, very, very simple mindfulness techniques, or just sitting and breathing and being okay with what happens up here, because it's going to get weird. Like a lot of us, we love to distract ourselves, because when we sit and don't do anything, we start whatever is that one person's condition, it's going to show up, and it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. So I try to help people be comfortable with that, and be comfortable with the parts of themselves that are scary or dark, and I think that, once we get to, if we allow ourselves to know those parts of ourselves better, we will better understand why we have developed the unhealthy habits that we have, because I believe that they are very much connected. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of the things that we do that don't serve us, whatever it may be, whatever unhealthy attachments we have, whether it be food or to relationships or whatever, I feel like a lot of those things are means of escape. They're means of like finding like temporary relief and temporary comforts from pain that has been with us a long, long time. And so I think that spirituality, whatever that means, I try, like, some people come to me and they really want to develop spiritual practice, and I can kind of like, you kind of have to find the way to speak to each person too, because everyone's kind of speaking a different language. But I think what I try to do first and foremost is just to get people to be comfortable to sit with themselves, and just to, take quiet time and take time to sit and do nothing, and without technique. We can kind of, I try to make it sound a lot simpler than it is. I try to like, maybe just make it seem more accessible than people might think, and be like, okay, we don't have to do mantra. We don't have to do any special visualization or technique. We're literally just going to sit and practice a breathing rhythm, and we'll do that for 5 minutes. And I try to get people to start really small, and work their way up. And I tell people that 2 minutes of meditation is enough. If you start with 0, if you're coming from 0 minutes, let's start with 2 minutes. And once 2 minutes seems manageable, let's go to 5 minutes, and take people as far as they're willing to go.
Yes. Yeah. And I think living in the world that we live in, there is distraction is so easily accessible, whether it's social media, whether it's work, whether it's our busy lifestyle. People they just gravitate more easily to distraction. And so I think that is such a good point. I mean, I've talked to many spiritual, shamanic, and I've never heard somebody quite put it the way that you just did, which is to just sit still for even if it's just 2 minutes, because for a lot of people that are so used to using distraction as a means of escape, sitting still can feel like a huge hurdle to just sit and not want to pick up your phone. And just getting them to do that can kind of give them a whole lot of consciousness to kind of what they've been doing all along to distract themselves from being still.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right, Julia. I mean, just given the times that we're in and the level and the noise that's everywhere, seemingly, a lot of these more advanced spiritual practices there's a place for that, but a lot of people aren't there yet. They're nowhere. They don't need that. What they need is less distraction, more presence. So I think that's a good place to begin. Just trying to be a little bit more present.
Yeah, and I don't know if you agree, but there's also, I think, in this space there can be people that see their integrative health practitioner and their massage therapist and their spiritual guide, and they can kind of be seeing all these professionals, even in the natural realm. But that can sometimes just be like the running from one distraction to the next of like, who's going to fix it? Who's going to solve it? And I love what you said about not having it, there's this hope that we all get to this destination place of, true happiness and where there's no pain and we've kind of made it. But I think the point that you make about it's not about that. It's more about what do we do with the parts of ourselves that aren't so happy and don't feel so safe and and how do we love those as much as the times that we notice ourselves being happy and joyful, and kind of sitting in both places in harmony. Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think, again, the part of how that plays into our physical health, like you said, is there's voids, there's all sorts of things that people fill with unhealthy habits. And if we can figure out why those habits were kind of set off to begin with, we can fill the gap where it started.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a long journey, it's like we need to be patient with ourselves too. Because we can hear this, someone might listen to this conversation and understand it conceptually. But when it comes into like actual practice, like sometimes it takes failing many times to get to the point where we can actually make that change. So I think that's where, self-compassion is so crucial, because, for myself, I failed countless times before I was able to actually like move past some of the unhealthy patterns I was carrying on. And we just get to a point where we just sometimes, it's just the right combination of elements, whether we hear the right thing and at the right time in the right place, and it just sort of clicks sometimes. But it is nice to have a guide. So I feel really blessed to be able to work with people in this capacity and to even just help a little bit, as we move through this together. It's really special.
Yes. Thank you. And thanks for sharing that all with myself, but also the listeners. So if you had to, I'm curious, we'll switch gears a little bit. If you had to share like one other than IHP, obviously, which I think you've kind of said resonated a lot with you, but do you have a favorite book? If somebody's listening to this and they're like, wow, this is really resonating with me. Do you have a favorite book, some sort of a podcast or a resource that you like to share with maybe other practitioners kind of wanting to either go on their own, maybe spirituality or some sort of healing journey in a way that doesn't involve the physical being? Do you have any resources for that?
Favorite book? If you haven't read the Tao Te Ching, I would start there. It's just a beautiful, simple kind of Taoist collection of verses that is just kind of points back to the same truth again and again. I that's kind of where my journey really began was with that book, because it was like, it's just so beautifully written and so poignant and poetic.
Yes, it's simple, doesn't go
simple.
Yeah.
I sort of come back to that, because I tend to, I can get into my head quite a bit too. And I love science, and I love, reading, what it's sort of the current trends are in wellness and kind of filling my head with knowledge, because you have to remember a lot of things too doing this work. So that's something that I like to come back to sort of like clear out a little bit of the extra and to kind of come back to just the basics.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So where can our listeners find you on social media? Where can they find you? Maybe it's a website, or kind of learn more about what you're doing in the health and wellness space?
Yeah, sure. So I post a bit on Instagram. My handle is The Wellness Wizard, and my website is DeStefano Wellness. That's the name of my practice. So they could find me in either place. I'm on Facebook as well. Just my first and last name, Luke DeStefano. You can connect with me there. And yeah, but I've been trying to get more active on Instagram. That's actually been the biggest challenge of doing this work, is like working remotely and needing to kind of be active in that space while also trying to, like you said, it's a distraction too. It's like I have a tendency to get too involved in that world too. So it's been interesting to try to take distance from that while being involved in it too. But I do try to post on there every few days. I try to post, relevant information or useful information, or at least try to bring a smile to someone's face. But you can find me there.
Okay. Yeah, definitely a balance with the social media, especially when you're trying to hold boundaries and keep yourself well, but also share with the world, because there's, this kind of at your fingertips type of expectation that, well, if you're here, why aren't you sharing? And where are you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's good medicine for the ego too, to keep yourself humble. And
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It was so great having you on the Integrative Health Coach Success podcast. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. We're really grateful, and we hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Julie. It was great to be here. Thanks so much for your time.
Of course. Thanks, Luke. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.